Welcome back to this week's episode of Basketsprawl. For part 3, we will talk about The Incredibles 2. Now, I just want to take this time for a second. I'm going to be doing a lot of talking about all types of different stuff. Next week, or at the end of June, I look to rank the Surgical Summers album with Ye and Nasir and Kids See Ghosts and Daytona and Tiana Taylor's upcoming album. I want to talk about what I'm listening to now, what movies are coming up. We got Sicario 2, Ant-Man 2, some other 2s, sequels coming out to close out the summer. So I'm going to be keeping you up to date with all the music and all the movies that I've been into and I'm feeling. So that leads me right to The Incredibles 2. The Incredibles, the original one, came out. I was very young. Right now it ranks about 3 in my all-time Pixar movies. It's one of my favorite superhero movies of all time, period. Nostalgically, me and my family, all 4 of us, my mom, my dad, my brother, and I, watched it on an air mattress, completely empty. Nothing else was in the room in our basement when we were repainting our basement, and it was just an air mattress, and we all went downstairs and watched The Incredibles, and it's a cool family moment. And that's kind of what a lot of people my age kind of have that experience with that movie. So some little background on why I really love The Incredibles is because, as you can see here, big Watchmen fan over here, and to this day, I will look you straight in the eye and tell you, The Incredibles, the original 2004 Incredibles, is still the best iteration of Watchmen that is yet to be brought to the big screen. And I'll just say this, you tell me which movie I'm talking about, or what story I'm talking about. Incredibles or Watchmen? Outlaw superheroes. Superheroes refuse to put their masks down. Bad guy starts killing off old superheroes. Superheroes have to get back into the fight to try to stop the bad guy who is trying to trick the world into believing that he is actually the good guy via a meticulously crafted looming threat. Watchmen or The Incredibles? You tell me. Same shit. So, big fan over here of The Incredibles. It really executed the Watchmen. Didn't really go into the themes, but we got Lindelof to thank for that. Let's go, Lindelof. I believe in you. Make my dreams come true. Please don't break my heart. I trust you. Should I? I don't know. Anyway, but the striking thing about The Incredibles that, upon rewatch, I actually saw it the other day with a few friends of mine. So I rewatched the first one to prep. None of it comes off corny, right? It deals with subverting real, genuine familial struggles and dynamics, and it kind of just comes off genuine and truly unforced. Really well-developed characters. You have Elastigirl, who's a mom that's juggling 3 different things, and Mr. Incredible. I saw my parents in The Incredibles. I saw my brother in Violet and Dash. I saw my friends in the same scenarios. It was just a very formative movie for kids my age and their parents, I think. Before we get into The Incredibles 2, let's talk a little bit about the superhero, movie, the superhero genre. In 2004, just for some perspective, movies that came out, the Marvel movies that came out that year were Thomas Jane's The Punisher, Spider-Man 2, which is a classic, and Blade Trinity, who, by the way, has a sword-wielding, very talkative Ryan Reynolds. So really, has things changed? Who knows? But that's what the superhero genre looked like in 2004. Now, the original Incredibles cleaned up at the Oscars. It won Best Animated Feature at the 2005 Oscars, Best Sound Mixing, and was nominated for Best Original Screenplay. I looked it up. Apparently it lost to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, screenplay by Charlie Kaufman, maybe one of his best screenplays ever, and that man is one of the all-time great screenwriters, so, I'd be tripping way harder if it didn't, if it got snubbed, but it rightfully went to Kaufman that year. And it was just generally accepted as like a perfect movie, pretty much. All critics loved it. It did the pace of the original Incredibles was incredible. It just moved so fluidly from scene to scene and set piece to set piece. And it just got its storytelling done so efficiently and heartwarmingly and hilariously. It's just a perfect movie, in my opinion. It feels really contained in its story, but it does a huge job of illustrating this huge scope because it creates its own universe in which superheroes are a part of it. So you never really know what time you're looking at, but it feels large. The stakes feel big. The side characters like Edna Mode and Frozone are pretty much iconic at this point. It just had everything work for it, and it's on cable all the time. It still holds up, still sounds amazing on some good speakers, still looks amazing. Yeah, Incredibles, incredible. So that brings us to the sequel, Incredibles 2, 14 years in the making. Since 2004, I think it would be more fair to say that superhero movies mean and function completely differently in 2018 than they did in 2004. The whole landscape is different now. So, what do I think of The Incredibles 2 in 2018? I loved it. I like a lot of stuff. I like mostly everything I see. I think nothing's really ever boring because everything's so intentional with movies. I think so much money goes into every second of making a movie, and sure, I have really high expectations when Brad Bird and the Pixar gang get in the studio to, come up with The Incredibles 2, but I really think they delivered on the tone. And if you can give me that same tone that I felt 14 years ago, I think, broadly speaking, on pass-fail, you certainly pass. I really loved it. I'm really only going to talk about the pros when I'm about to get into The Incredibles 2 a little bit. I'm not going to give you any spoilers. Don't worry, I hate spoilers. So I'm just going to talk about it thematically a little bit. I was a little nervous going in that Jack the baby was going to, that gimmick would get old, is all over the trailers, but boy was I wrong. And just the characters in general, I forgot how well developed they all were. And just spending time with all of them again, it brought me back, and it made me look forward, and it was a really cool feeling. The movie makes a really interesting fundamental choice in this one. I think the movie had to have taken a couple things into consideration when it was being created. Mainly, I think that the team behind Incredibles 2 had to know that their target audience for the first one was ages 7 to 15, and 14 years later, all those kids are 21 to 30 now. Also, their parents are in that target market. So your parents, you get to go see this movie and reflect on how you raised your kids. Honestly, you get to take an experience you had with them as a child and compare it to as an adult. And that's the time that's changed, and that's how impactful both these movies have the potential to be. Sure, the original Incredibles is probably still a babysitter staple, and seeing it the other day, I can attest I'd be lying if I said less than 50% of the audience was kids. I mean, kids were everywhere. So I'm sure kids of all ages are seeing The Incredibles and they all love it. But I'm saying all this to state my main observation about the movie. And don't worry, even though it may seem like this is no spoiler talk. The main villain in Incredibles 2 goes by the name The Screenslaver, which is, kind of definitely clever and funny. But it's a villain that really is written like an indictment on that original target market, and kind of how we ended up. There's a monologue that doesn't really serve the plot, but it gives you a lot of good idea of where that character is coming from, the Screenslaver. We're all distracted by our screens constantly, and you get hypnotized, and it just resonated. Sleeping on this movie and thinking about it today, that stuff really resonates with me. What YouTube video am I gonna click next in my queue? What tweet is gonna gain my attention? How do I live this 7 seconds to this 7 seconds without Vine? Where am I gonna get my distractions from? And this movie was keenly aware that this is who those kids grew up to be. It resonated with me. It was definitely a choice, and I think it came off really well. I don't think it's a coincidence that one of the teenagers, preteen female superhero characters is named Void, because we're all searching to fill that void, being a millennial. Or I don't think it's a coincidence that by the end of this movie, a lot of the weight of the world, if you will, is on the kids' shoulders. Believe in the kids, bro. It's all about the kids. I don't think it's a coincidence. I also recognize that that's pretty heady and I'm talking spiritual and fourth dimension type stuff. So I know I'm doing that. I'm gonna reel it back, but I really do. I mean, all that stuff had to be purposeful, and to execute with such huge vision, I think is awesome and exceptional. All the powers that were shown, especially by Jack and all the other superheroes, they were just so creatively illustrated. All the callbacks worked really well. Brad Bird still is just maybe the best superhero director of all time. I mean, he's got 2 movies back to back, given 14 years apart. They really do everything right about the superhero movie and subverts it in a way that lets me let that resonate. And that's why people make movies. So it has that going for it. I think at one point in the movie, Frozone might directly look right into the camera, and he says something to the effect of, while talking with Bob and Helen Parr, you know, wear your old suits. This guy's got a thing for nostalgia, you know, looking right at the camera. And some people are saying that's a cash grab. You know, for me, that's why I go to be entertained, is to feel that pureness and feel that, I don't know, love. So, you could cash in on it. If you do it well, take my money. So I thought they did it really well. My final thoughts on Incredibles 2, probably not better than the first one, but definitely a worthy joyride of a sequel, truly. I took for granted how well these characters were all well developed and how much I loved spending time with them. They keep their clever meta references to the superhero genre were well, everything was great. I went to go see Incredibles 2, and I hoped that it would give off that Incredibles feel, and it certainly did, and I'm really happy with that. Was it as good as the first one? I don't know. I have to sit with this one for 14 years, and I'll get back to you. I will say this, though. There was a short, the animated short before this movie was about bows or dumplings, something like that. Really troubling, really uncomfortable. I think I nervously laughed throughout that whole thing. Really weird short. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. Wrap up The Incredibles 2. Go see it. It's great in a theater near you.